Hi there, and welcome back to my Sonic Unleashed playthrough. And in this part, we'll be finishing off the night levels of Chun-Nan. And when I look at this whole Chinese mystical theme or whatever, I am getting huge vibes of Mulan, the Disney movie. It's sort of reminding me of that a lot. And actually, what is a nice touch in these levels is the fact that the items are hidden in Chinese-style pots. I hope they're not from the Ming Dynasty, because video game characters just seem to have a general knack for destroying antiques. And yeah, to go back to talking about Mulan for a second, that is actually a movie I do like, and it's pretty different from Disney. For a start, it strays away from their European fantasy area, because they go obviously into Chinese culture. And also, in terms of a female protagonist, it's like the only time you see a Disney princess, quote unquote, actually go to war and effectively kill people. Although she does do it with an avalanche, so it's not quite the same as stabbing someone with a sword or shooting them with an arrow, but still, her body count is up there. So I guess in that respect, it was a really different film for Disney to do. And it was part of that whole 90s renaissance of Disney, so yeah, it's a good movie and I like it. Although, if I'm honest, I'll think about it now, for a Disney movie, the music is actually quite bland, for the most part. I can't remember most of the songs. All of the one song I do remember is, of course, Make a Man Out of You, and that is actually a really good song. It's really catchy, stays in your head a lot, and it's fun to sing along to, or whatever. I'm not really the singing type, but you know what I mean. In fact, for me, that one song really pushes the movie up, in my opinion at least. It adds a couple of stars to its rating. And you can probably tell just by looking that this level is obviously quite platformy. In fact, it ends with this sort of platforming section, which you're about to see. And that's actually something very different from the PS3 version, because the PS3 version is essentially a lot more combat. It does have platforming, but not as much as this version, of course. And something I definitely like in the PS2 version of these levels is the sort of focus on natural environments. And you can see what I mean here. Like, we've just run through some fields, we're now in a mountainous area, and we're also about to climb a waterfall. And that's something I do appreciate, the sort of variety in locations. You know, to talk about China for a second, like I've said before, it is a very fascinating country with lots of cultural nuances that I find fascinating. And of course, to give some information on China, it's, in terms of landmass, it's the third biggest country in the world. And it's also the most populated, with 1.2 billion, although that tends to change, of course. The common language used is Mandarin, which is one of the most spoken languages in the world, for obvious reasons. And it is, of course, a communist state, or a socialist state. Yeah, and yeah, it's actually one of the last ones going, really. They seem to be falling or making the switch to capitalism, like the Soviet Union. Now, of course, being a communist state, the religion of China is technically atheist. But of course, there are quite a few going on within China itself, even if the state doesn't recognise them. For example, I've taken a look at this, and one of them, for example, is Taoism, or Tao, which is something I have trouble understanding, because from what I gather, it's a philosophy about enlightenment and finding a balance within nature, and just in general, it is a philosophy which focuses on nature. And I guess I don't understand it per se, but when I say that, I'm just not really a poetic person or a spiritual person at all. So the idea of finding balance in nature, it seems kind of vague to me. Or yeah, it's just something which isn't for me, I suppose. But when I look at the meaning of the word Tao, it actually means path or route. So if the whole philosophy is about looking for answers rather than assuming you already know them, then I think I could accept it more, or understand it more, I should say. I mean, I can appreciate a philosophy that's about looking for answers rather than actually having them. You know, the whole idea that the journey is more rewarding than the location. And if you really want to like push the philosophy or expand it to something else, you could apply it to game design actually. You know, the idea that progressing through the level is the actual point of a game rather than reaching the end of it. Finding a balance between platforming and speed, a balance between easy and difficult. Yeah. I guess you could take the Deer approach when designing games, but that's probably a bit of a stretch. Although speaking of actual games design, I do like that waterfall sequence because it's just a cool idea of platforming up a huge raging waterfall. Now this section here, it's as difficult as falling off a log, because you could so easily do the running animation there and accidentally run off the edge of that obstacle. Because I've explained in previous parts, to run you press twice on the directional stick in the same direction and he runs. And as you can see there, when you're edging yourself across a log very carefully, you could so easily do a running animation instead and run straight off into the water. So yeah, just take it easy on those log sections there, and it shouldn't give you too much trouble. Now to talk about the religions in China again, the most popular one, or the most well-known one, would obviously be Buddhism, which actually started in India. But yeah, from what I understand about Buddhism, it's more about it's actually, it could be argued it's an atheist religion, if that makes sense, because it doesn't actually state anything about an actual god. But it's just about enlightenment, really, finding a balance in your own life, I guess. Very similar to Taoism, from what I understand. And of course, the principles of Buddhism, it's I won't lie to you, this is sort of a layman's understanding, but the general idea is that desire is suffering, and it's not actually about wanting stuff or needing stuff itself. It's the fact that you want it. By being greedy, you make yourself miserable, in a sense. And that's something I can actually understand. That, you know, that makes sense to me. Negative emotions can destroy you from the inside. And just to say something now, it might seem like I'm going off topic, and that's something I'm doing deliberately, because I only have a few things to say about these levels, really. So what I did was I essentially researched China, which this level is obviously based off, just to find talking points or find stuff out which interests me. You know, which is why I'm sort of talking more about the history of China than the actual level. But speaking of the actual level, I really think this is a really cool sequence here, when you start off running across the Great Wall of China. And in the PS3 version of the Chunan Night level, you don't actually do that. And I think that's kind of a shame. But anyway, this whole running across the Great Wall of China, it is quite reminiscent of Crash Bandicoot 3, where Crash's sister rode a tiger called Coco across the Great Wall. And those levels were really fun. They were actually the best levels in the game, in my opinion. But anyway, like I was saying, it's a really cool idea in general, just to have Sonic run across the Great Wall of China. And particularly to talk about this whole idea of Sonic travelling around the world and going through levels based off real locations. Yeah, it would have been a really big missed opportunity if they did this concept, this game, and they didn't use the Great Wall of China. It's like a must-have for this type of game. And something you can see in the background that I like is the sort of temple which we're heading towards. And that's a really nice touch, the fact that your goal is constantly visible. Now this section here I find really tricky because these enemies have this really cool ability to both suck and blow at the same time. And what I mean by that is they blow you off the edge quite easily, which really sucks. So yeah, I'm really not a fan of these fans. They're just annoying and they frustrate me. But anyway, my advice to you there is just to move quickly between their little blowing fits, and just move on quickly and just try not to deal with them in general. And something you can see here is the Great Wall of China is kind of broken up, and of course it's from what I understand it was first constructed in the 7th century during the Qin dynasty, obviously to repel invaders, and it's been maintained and reconstructed over a period of 2,000 years. So it is really quite a monumental achievement in terms of human engineering. Now, something I do realise about the Great Wall of China, which didn't really surprise me, is the fact that you can't see it from space. People think you can actually see it from space when you really can't. And I say that because it always made sense to me that you couldn't. I mean, yeah, if you look at the Great Wall of China, it is really long, but at the same time, it's not really that wide. So of course you wouldn't be able to see it from space. Now this level here does introduce these sort of water barrels, you can see there, which I obviously use to put out the fire. And yeah, that's something which comes up later on in the game. And I guess that's okay. I mean, throwing barrels of water, it's an okay level gimmick, but yeah, nothing really special. You know, when I look at this level, I think there is a slight problem with the aesthetics. Like I have mentioned before, I do like them overall, which is true, I do like them, but there just seems to be a lot of grey. You know, grey bricks, the grey Wall of China, the grey mountains, and yeah, it could have done with a bit more colour, I think. And you can see this part of the level, things get a little more trickier. They've not only upped the amount of enemies we have to face, but the section coming up also requires you to do some platforming over a bottomless pit while enemies are attacking you, but you'll see that momentarily. You know, when I consider the fact that the Werehog has combat abilities, and we're in China, I'm suddenly getting images of a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, that well-known kung fu film, or karate film, or whatever. Oh, let's just say martial arts movie. And yeah, something, like I was saying, something like that would be really awesome for this game. I've sort of Sonic as the Werehog do acrobatic leaps across rooftops. Yeah, but oh well, we got what we got. And something else I do like about this level is the fact that we can see the finish from various points throughout it. Like you just saw in the background, you can see this sort of red glowing palace, and that's obviously where the finish is. And yeah, like I said, it's good that they show us the objective, the finish, while we're playing. It shows our progression and also shows where we need to go to. So I guess you could call that some sort of cinematic level design, if you will. I mean, after all, it is sort of building to a climax, or an ending. Now, to mention the length of these levels, at this point it's okay, but yeah, from this point onwards, they become too long. They sort of outstay their welcome. And at this point here, you can see I'm taking it very slowly with these enemies, because there's a danger I could pull off a combo and just fly off the edge. Yeah, so the enemy's not really a threat falling to my death. A huge threat, actually. And it's not really helped by the fact that I'm also surrounded by these flying enemies, which also want a piece of me. But my advice to you is just take your time. I mean, here your biggest threat is you rushing and going off the edge. So you can see that, just taking my time, having a casual stroll in Chunan, beating up enemies one at a time. Oh, and this guy. Now, anyone who's played the PS3 version knows there are points where you're required to fight one of these guys on a sort of a rooftop, and that's tricky enough. Although in the PS3 version, these enemies have a shockwave attack, which throw you off the edge of a building. But say in this instance, it's actually not too bad. Like, the enemy won't throw you off a cliff. Just stay away from the edges, and it shouldn't give you too much trouble. You can see here I'm playing it safe. I'm collecting rings to sustain my health, and I'm just attacking him from the back. And I'm also taking a sort of hit and run tactic, as you just saw. Run up, get my attacks in, then run away. Very hit and run. And here it is. And you can see now as we approach the goal ring, as it were, it sort of ends right outside the palace, which has been visible at numerous points throughout the level. So yeah, you know, at least it sort of built up to the ending. Granted, there's nothing to do once you get here except just touch the ring, but whatever. Yeah. So overall, this level, yeah, pretty good. Kind of difficult at times. Overall, it's one of the okay night levels. And my S rank here, I'm pleased I at least managed to get some S ranks. So, you know, let's say if I was being a completionist, there will be no reason to play that level again. So, I guess that's a good thing, I guess. Okay, so that's it for the PS2 version of Chunan Night. Please join me again in the next part, where we'll see what this level looks like in the PS3 version.